Charles Whitmore's empire stretched across 3 continents. His skyscrapers pierced the clouds of New York, London, and Tokyo. Yet inside his mansion, silence ruled with an iron fist. His 6-year-old daughter Emma had never spoken a single word. The doctors delivered their verdicts with clinical precision. Her hearing was perfect. Her vocal cords functioned normally. Her brain showed no abnormalities. Every test screamed the same truth. She could speak, but she simply wouldn't. Margaret Whitmore's tears had carved permanent valleys beneath her eyes. Each morning brought fresh heartbreak as Emma smiled, laughed silently, and played without ever calling for Mama or Papa. The couple had transformed into ghost parents, haunting their own home, waiting for sounds that never came. Charles threw millions at the problem. Top pediatric specialists from Harvard Medical examined Emma. Speech therapists from Switzerland worked with her for months. Child psychologists from prestigious clinics analyzed every aspect of her behavior. Each expert left with the same helpless expression, their expensive consultations ending in expensive silence. The mansion's marble floors echoed with emptiness. Emma's nursery remained decorated with alphabet blocks that mocked them daily. Picture books lay scattered across carpeted floors, their colorful pages filled with words Emma refused to speak. Her toys beeped and sang, creating a cruel symphony of sounds she would never join. Margaret often found herself standing outside Emma's bedroom door, listening to the gentle rustling of sheets and soft breathing. Sometimes she imagined hearing whispered words, but reality always crashed back like cold water. The child who should have been chattering endlessly about princesses and ponies remained locked in her world of beautiful silence. Charles buried himself deeper into work, building more towers as if height could somehow reach his daughter's voice. But every boardroom victory felt hollow when he returned home to Emma's wordless embraces. Their love filled the house, yet something essential remained missing. The most successful man in the city had failed at the most basic parental dream, hearing his child say his name. Tuesday morning arrived like any other day in the Whitmore household. Charles barked orders into his phone while Margaret prepared Emma's breakfast. The familiar rhythm of their silent routine played out across the marble kitchen. Emma finished her cereal without requesting more, cleaned her hands without asking for help, and wandered toward the front door as her parents remained absorbed in their adult responsibilities. The electronic gate, usually secured with multiple locks, stood slightly ajar. The gardener had left it open after bringing in fresh flowers. Emma, curious as any 6-year-old, slipped through the gap and onto the sidewalk beyond. Margaret discovered Emma's absence first. Her scream shattered the morning calm like breaking glass. "Charles, she's gone." The phone clattered from his hands as panic seized his chest. They sprinted outside, hearts pounding with the terrible fear every parent knows. But Emma wasn't lost or in danger. She stood perfectly still on the sidewalk, mesmerized by a man in orange overalls. The garbage collector moved with practiced efficiency, lifting bins and tossing bags into his rumbling truck. His uniform was stained with honest work, his helmet slightly crooked, his gloves worn from years of service. Daniel Hayes had worked this route for 8 years. He knew every house, every family's trash schedule, every dog that barked from behind fences. But he had never noticed the little girl, who now watched him with wide, fascinated eyes. "Hey there, princess," he said gently, setting down a heavy bag. His voice carried no expectation, no pressure for response. He simply acknowledged her presence with the same warmth he showed to chattering children who waved from windows. Emma's lips curved into a smile. Then something magical happened. She laughed, not aloud, but with her whole body, shoulders shaking with silent delight. The sound existed only in her eyes and expression, yet it rang clearer than church bells to her parents. Charles stood frozen, watching his daughter respond to a stranger in ways she never had with expensive specialists. Margaret gripped his arm, whispering urgently, "Look at her face. She's completely engaged." For the first time in years, Emma seemed truly present, truly connected to another human being who existed outside their family's desperate silence. Days passed, and Emma's morning ritual transformed. She positioned herself by the front gate every day at exactly 8:30, waiting for the rumble of Daniel's garbage truck. Her small hands gripped the iron bars as she watched him work with the intensity of someone solving the world's greatest puzzle. Daniel never failed to notice her. "Morning, Princess," became his greeting, delivered with the same gentle consistency. He never demanded responses or showed frustration at her silence. Instead, he treated her like any other child on his route, sharing stories that flowed as naturally as breathing. "Yesterday, Raccoon family had a party in the Henderson's bin," he told her while hefting a bag. "Left tiny paw prints everywhere like they were dancing." Emma's eyes sparkled, and she clapped silently, her whole body expressing delight that words never could. Margaret began approaching the gate during these interactions, desperate to understand what made this stranger succeed where expensive experts had failed. "I don't even know your name," she admitted one morning. "Daniel Hayes, ma'am. Been working this route for 8 years. His voice carried no pride or apology, just simple fact. Charles emerged with his usual protective instincts blazing. "Listen, Mr. Hayes, we appreciate your kindness, but Emma needs professional help, not casual conversation from strangers." Daniel's response came without defensiveness. Maybe she just needs someone who doesn't expect anything from her. He turned back to Emma, crouching to her eye level. "Princess, did I tell you about the cat that jumped into the Morrison's bin? Scared me half to death when it popped out like a furry jack-in-the-box." Emma's silent laughter filled the morning air. Her hands moved in animated gestures, mimicking Daniel's storytelling. Margaret covered her mouth, tears threatening to spill. "Charles, she never responds like this to anyone." The wealthy businessman found himself questioning everything. 6 years of expensive treatments, international consultations, and desperate prayers had produced nothing. Yet here stood a garbage collector who somehow unlocked joy in Emma's expressions without trying. The most successful man in the city was learning humility from someone society barely noticed. Charles watched his daughter's face transform during these brief encounters, wondering if the answer to their prayers wore orange overalls. Weeks melted into a new routine. Daniel became Emma's anchor to the outside world, the bridge between her silent sanctuary and a realm of gentle communication. He never pushed for words, never showed disappointment at her quiet responses. Instead, he created a space where her silence felt comfortable rather than concerning. Emma began leaving small gifts by the gate, drawings of stick figures in orange uniforms, wildflowers picked from the garden, her favorite marble that caught sunlight like a tiny rainbow. Daniel treasured each offering, treating them with the reverence reserved for priceless artifacts. "You drew this for me?" he would ask, studying her artwork with genuine admiration. Emma would nod proudly, her smile radiant enough to power the mansion. These moments of connection grew stronger with each passing day, invisible threads weaving between two souls who understood each other perfectly. Charles found himself changing too. He began walking Emma to the gate himself, putting away his phone, dismissing his chauffeur. Margaret noticed the shift. Her husband was learning to be present instead of productive. They stopped treating Emma like a problem requiring solutions and started seeing her as their daughter who needed acceptance. The breakthrough came on a warm Thursday afternoon. Emma ran toward Daniel clutching a drawing, her bare feet pattering against concrete. The picture showed 2 stick figures, holding hands beneath a brilliant sun. Daniel knelt down, studying the artwork with his usual gentle attention. "Is this me?" he asked, pointing to the figure in orange. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "And this beautiful girl is you?" Another excited nod. "And what's this bright thing up here?" Emma opened her mouth. The world held its breath. Her lips moved, shaping sounds that had been trapped for 6 long years. Then, barely audible, came a whisper that changed everything. "Happy." Charles's knees buckled. Margaret gasped, hands flying to her heart. But Daniel remained perfectly calm, as if he had always known this moment would arrive. "That's right, Princess. Happy." His voice carried no surprise, only gentle confirmation. Emma looked at her parents' tear-streaked faces, then back at Daniel's encouraging smile. Stronger this time, with growing confidence, she repeated the word that opened her world. "Happy." Emma's first word created ripples that transformed the entire Whitmore household. She didn't suddenly become a chatterbox, but her silence no longer felt like a wall. Words came slowly, like shy animals emerging from hiding. Each new sound was a celebration, each whispered phrase a victory worth more than any business deal Charles had ever closed. Mama came 2 weeks later, delivered as a soft gift while Margaret brushed her hair. Papa followed during a bedtime story, causing Charles to weep openly for the first time since Emma's birth. Simple words like yes, more, and please began punctuating their days, transforming routine activities into conversations. Daniel continued his morning visits, now greeted by Emma's tentative, "Hi, Daniel." Their friendship had evolved but remained special. He still told stories about his route, but now Emma occasionally responded with single-word comments. Funny, or cat. Their connection had given her the confidence to trust other voices, including her parents. Charles learned to measure success differently. Stock prices and profit margins seemed insignificant compared to Emma's soft, "Good morning, Papa." He began working from home more often, reading her stories not as therapy, but as pure enjoyment. Margaret sang lullabies again, her voice no longer lonely in the silence. The expensive specialists who had failed them would never understand what Daniel accomplished through simple acceptance. He had seen Emma not as a problem requiring solutions, but as a complete person deserving respect. His gift wasn't medical knowledge or therapeutic techniques. It was the patience to wait and the wisdom to listen without demanding. One evening, as Emma drifted to sleep after whispering "love you" to both parents, Margaret reflected on their journey. "I used to pray for her first word. Now I pray she never loses that beautiful smile." Charles kissed his daughter's forehead, understanding finally that Emma had never been broken. She had simply needed someone to show her that silence was acceptable until she chose otherwise. Daniel's garbage truck still rumbled past their gate each morning, but now it carried different meaning. Not rescue, but friendship. Not miracle, but human kindness. Emma ran to meet him, with words bubbling from her lips, their conversations brief, but precious. Charles often watched from the porch, grateful for the garbage man who had given them something no fortune could buy. The sound of his daughter's voice, and more importantly, the knowledge that she had always been perfect exactly as she was.